Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a toast to all other good friars, to those here with us tonight and those with us in memory, those who arrived a little before us and left ahead of us. A toast to William Collier, to George M. Cohen, Will Rogers, Victor Herbert, Sam Bernard, Eddie Foy, Enrico Caruso, Damon Runyon, Lou Fields, Jimmy Walker. You can't name them all. Even at this moment, most of you must be remembering the names of friars whose friendship and memory will be with you always. No, you can't name them all, but you can say in memory of them all, you will always be present whenever good friars gather in fellowship. And to all friars and guests of friars here tonight, another friar not with us who would have been here tonight but was taken suddenly ill and is in a hospital, but is here in more than spirit. His talent is here to represent him. The composer of the Jessel cantata, Mark Warnow.
You may listen if you choose. Introducing a new Methuselah with a personality all his own. We don't mean Zanuck, we don't mean Celtic, we don't mean Cecil, we mean Jessel. I don't want him, you can have him, he's too old for me. He's too cold for me, he's too old for me. He's got asthma and his plasma ain't what it should be. He's too old for me, and he has water on the knee. He gets dizzy when he's dancing. With his gumbo, with his gumbo, with his gumbo, with his gumbo. Is he zoot? Is he cute? Does he entertain the folks? Do we laugh at all his jokes? No, 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 no. When they see him whip and scream, he's too old for me. He's no chickadee, must be 93. I confess, oh, Mr. Jessel, much too old for me. He's much too old for me. He's much too old for me. He's much too old for me. And me, and water on the knee. He's much too old.
Thank you. Jessel was 50 yesterday. It's not so old. Guest of honor, brother friars, and ladies and gentlemen. Unaccustomed as I am to speaking ahead of our guest of honor, and I'm going to tell you something that you may or not believe, but Jessel did everything in his power to take this job away from me tonight. He wanted to be the guest of honor and the Toastmaster. But fortunately, ladies and gentlemen, I happen to be an officer of the Friars Club, and I put a stop to it. I am the proctor of the Friars. I was elected proctor about 3 months ago. A proctor of the Friars is equivalent to a photographer on Reader's Digest. Just the same, ladies and gentlemen, I'm highly flattered that I was asked by our club to be Toastmaster for a dinner given to the greatest Toastmaster in America. I mean, it gives me a feeling, even though it may be temporary, that at least I am next best. And being next best to Jessel, whether it's Toastmaster, producer, entertainer, or any of his other accomplishments, is quite an achievement. George Jessel, I believe, ladies and gentlemen, is the most amazing figure that we have in show business. I mean, there's no peer in any of its branches. He's as witty as Groucho Marx, as colorful as Orson Welles, as glib of tongue as Bob Hope. At times, he's even funnier than Jack Warner. I'll even go further than that. Georgie Jessel is as sophisticated as Noel Coward, as charming as Chevalier, and as versatile as Governor Folsom of Alabama. Mr. Jessel also has the unique distinction of being the only American mentioned in Who's Who and the Kinsey Report. Being Toastmaster means that I have to jump up here every few minutes. I'll have to be up here all night, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time at this moment. If you look up at the dais, you'll see what a grand array of speakers we have, the finest dais that I have ever seen. I know that if these gentlemen were paid tonight, it would probably cost $100,000 or $200,000 for their performances. Even I have cut my regular fee in half tonight. But in introducing the first speaker tonight, I want to say that every potash has his Perlmutter. Of course, Jessel would elevate that phrase. He would say every Damon has his Pythias. You know, he would make that high class. I'm sticking to mine that every potash has his Perlmutter. Hope has his Crosby. I have Fred Allen. Orson Welles has Orson Welles. Jessel has Eddie Cantor. I'm going to introduce Eddie Cantor first because I believe he knows our guest of honor better and longer than any member of this dais. I want to give Eddie credit also. I've listened to his program recently for the hell he's been giving Joseph Stalin. Oh, really, I understand that he even threatened that if Stalin doesn't do something about it, cooperate, he might even fire the mad Russian. Unfortunately, Cantor has a very low hooper in Moscow, and it doesn't help. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you one of the great comedians of this generation, Eddie Cantor.
It's about time that the Friars honored their abbot. It's about time that we recognized the greatest after-dinner speaker in this or any other country. It's about time that we brought, as the guest of honor, a man whose talent is unparalleled in show business. These, ladies and gentlemen, are not my words. This is taken from the minutes of a meeting at the Friars of March the 9th. And I'd like to read it. Jessel, quote, "It's about time that the Friars honored their abbot. Why do I have to keep making up jokes for Bob Hope and Jack Benny and Al Jolson? This is still Jessel. What am I, the abbot with the Friars or the abbot with Costello?" And so on March the 10th, it was unanimously agreed that the abbot would be given a dinner here on this night at the Biltmore Bowl. Ladies and gentlemen, I have known Jessel for a lifetime. I played with George Jessel in the Kid Cabaret of Gus Edwards of sainted memory. In 1911, Jessel at that time was 13 years of age, not yet 13. And so being of the Jewish faith, he studied diligently for his confirmation, bar mitzvah, if you will. And the morning of his bar mitzvah, he called me on the phone. And he said, Eddie, today I want you to bring a high hat and a frock coat and striped trousers. I said, Jessel, that's a funny outfit for me for a bar mitzvah. He says, I'm also getting married. Marriage. Little did I know that it was going to become a habit. And so for 37 years, George Jessel and I have been intimate friends. We have basked in this great warmth we call show business. And Jessel and I have a great deal in common. We have the same temperaments. We've lived the same kind of a life. With us both, it's been one girl after another. I have paid for mine. As a matter of fact, I paid for some of his. And he has come a long way in show business. Jack has told you that he is the greatest Toastmaster ever. He's a great comedian and a producer. But did you ever catch him at a funeral? He is wonderful. He is wonderful. These things are nothing to Jessel. He loves to go to a funeral. And all through the years, he makes notes on all his friends. Because he's a busy man. He wants to be ready. And many times he's called me on the phone. I've said hello, and he hung up. He's just checking. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not something that I'm making up. This is the truth. His very close associate, Lou Cooper, handed me on Friday some notes that he has in his desk. Georgie will be surprised at this thing, but I'm sure he won't mind. And these are some of the things he has written down for me when I pass on. It's wonderful. I got such a fine feeling to know that Jessel would say these things. He intends to say, a fond farewell to this sainted minstrel who has led a kaleidoscopic existence. This man, this isn't goodbye from one actor to another. This is a fond farewell from a brother to a brother. Oh, brother. And Lou tells me that he has already purchased, at least he's made a down payment, on a tombstone for me as a little going-away present. And on it, he has engraved Eddie Cantor, born January 31st, 1892, with, of course, a blank, the day of my passing. And underneath this, furnished by his lifelong friend, George Jessel, producer of the Dolly Sisters. I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now, and Nightmare Alley, Oliver Shullum. In preparation, call me Mister. Jessel has done some wonderful things. And he has reached great heights. He tells me he's his own boss now at 20th Century. There's a little sign up in his office. Preparing burlesque and Xanax breakfast. Jessel has many good friends here tonight. We are all his friends. And there are many people who should be here tonight who would have enjoyed this tribute to Georgie. One who loved him very well, very dearly. He always said, "That's my Georgie." A man who gave Georgie his start. Gus Edwards. And I'm sure that Lottie Jessel, whom we loved so much, Georgie and I, Georgie's mother, and I'm sure that Georgie must be thinking, he must be saying, tonight, there's a glow in my mother's eyes. Thank you.
You know, Cantor says that Jessel likes to speak at funerals. Jessel travels around this country so much and so fast that when he dies, it'll take Utter McKinley 3 months to catch up with the body of this thing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, going from a comedian of many years of experience to one of more or less of the present day, I bring you a young fellow now who was the biggest sensation that London, England has had in 30 years. Not only was he great in the theater and did such terrific business, he was entertained by royalty, the king and queen, Princess Elizabeth and her husband. Even Winston Churchill switched those famous words, blood, sweat, and tears, to "git, got, gittle." And he's come back, and he hasn't changed a bit. He's still the same schmo that he always was. Here he is, Danny Kaye, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. Toastmaster, guest of honor, ladies and gentlemen. I don't really belong on this dais. I feel like such a baby. I must also tell you before we start anything that I have known nobody longer than anybody in this room. There was a preview of Georgie's picture called I Wonder Who's Kissing Her Now. There was Groucho Marx and Jack Benny, Jolson, I don't remember. Oh, George Burns. And they were all talking about the picture after it was all over, and I walked over and I said, "You know something, fellas?" And George Burns said to me, "Hey, kid, get us a pack of cigarettes." So now you can imagine how comfortable I feel on this dais. Whatever I may say about Georgie Jessel can only be in the kind of words that I will make up in my own mind when I am 20 years older. Georgie has introduced me at a great many benefits, at a great many parties, and he said a great many things about me. My racket is not getting up and telling jokes. I realized that very early in life. And I do not intend to stand here and tell you any jokes. However, I do intend to stand here and tell you just one or two things about George Jessel. Whatever I may say about him will be very reminiscent in my own mind, because I have been at a great many dinners, and all the kind words and the warm generosity and the thoughtfulness that Georgie has been able to say about other people would sound to me in my own mind like I was using Georgie's words. So it's very difficult for me to say anything that will sound enlightening and uplifting and very flattering to George. All I can tell you is that I am extremely proud to be here. And the people sitting on the dais represent, in show business, the kind of era, the kind of glamour, the kind of stardust that I would like to rub off on me in the next years of my life. And if Georgie can somehow realize that through all the warmth and the generosity and the unselfishness which he has given to other people, if he can but realize that all you people here tonight are a token of your esteem and your affection and your generosity for George, he should be very happy, and I am very happy for being able to allow it to be here. Thank you.
You know, Danny was rather serious tonight, but then most of you have seen him work, have witnessed his performance. You know what a great, great artist he is. I don't know, he's fresh and young and up and coming. It's frightening. Sorry, I bought my new car. The next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the great executives of the motion picture industry. His taste and his judgment that go into the making of pictures strongly suggest that even though he may not personally produce or direct them, that they still have the Goldwyn touch. A man who's kept our business a great and dignified industry, Mr. Samuel Goldwyn.
Lieutenant Governor, Your Honor the Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, and brother Friars. Before, a little while ago, I had a couple of gags, and I tried them out on Bob Hope. And he said, "You're supposed to be a producer and not be funny, and don't try it." So I'm not going to try and be funny. I wanted to sit at this distinguished table tonight for two specific reasons. First, to pay my tribute to the ambassador of the world, the best we've ever had. A great entertainer who has come a long way from those Gus Edward days. A man who is dear to all of us, Georgie Carmichael. I'm sorry. And secondly, to sit close enough to get a good look at several comedians who through the years, have taken a lot of money from me. You don't know what a novelty it is for me to sit and listen to Hope, Cantor, and Kaye speak dialogue that I don't have to pay for. It's a great satisfaction to me to be able to pay tribute to a man who's been a credit to the show business for so long. And believe me, Georgie has been in the business a long, long time. As a matter of fact, he's been in it so long that there are some people that say that Jessel was the actor that shot Lincoln. But I know that could not be true. If Lincoln had ever heard Jessel sing, he'd shot him first. But even if we have any doubts about that Lincoln business, it's a fact that George was tied in closely with another president. As a matter of fact, he was the advance man for Woodrow Wilson. He made so many speeches for Wilson and Zanuck, you would have thought that Darrell was running for vice president. Those speeches of George's when he was plugging that picture would have made Wilson president today. Maybe that wouldn't have been a bad idea at all. When Darrell expressed regret at the Academy a few weeks ago, he hadn't received the Academy Award for Wilson, I didn't know whether to blame the Academy or Jessel. Of course, not many people know how Jessel came to the attention of Zanuck. Jessel worked with a telephone for so many years in vaudeville that when Zanuck produced a picture with Don Amici disclosing that Alexander Graham Bell had invented the telephone, Jessel registered a loud protest. Jessel thought that he invented it. This started a friendship between Zanuck and Jessel, which resulted in Jessel becoming Zanuck's right hand. There are those who say that Darrell never lets his right hand know what his left hand is doing. Of course, in this particular case, the right hand doesn't know what he's doing. But they do think highly of him as a producer at 20th Century Fox. He's doing a picture there right now, which in a way is very much like Georgie himself. It's been made and remade over and over again. It has been made so often that they figured by now it's safe to let even Georgie do it. Besides, who knows more about burlesque girls than Jessel? Georgie is a man with a great heart who's given unsparingly his talents and abilities at benefits, dinners, parties, and all sorts of affairs like that. He has provided more laughs and entertainment for non-paying guests than anyone I know. Maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea, if Georgie kept some of these jokes for his pictures that people pay to see. Let me be truly serious for a moment before I conclude. From the bottom of my heart, I am really happy that the people of Hollywood have begun to recognize Georgie's real ability in motion pictures. It's about time people started giving him dinners. This dinner is a fitting tribute to his position in our industry as an outstanding producer. Georgie, any time the 20th Century Fox may be foolish enough to let you go, I want you to know there's a place for you with me. You can come to my house any time. For dinner. Thank you very much.
I told you Zanuck was fool enough to let me go, you know, Sam. The next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is supposed to be a straight man. A straight man of probably the most famous comedy team in radio. But believe me, he is much more than a straight man. He is a comedian's comedian. We who know him best bow to his ability and tenacity. At a house party, when you ask him to sing Ain't Misbehavin', it becomes a filibuster. I have a reputation of being his easiest audience. But then you can't go by me. I'm a pushover for all comedians. I laughed all the way through The Horn Blows at Midnight. And when you're alone in a theater, that's hard to do, believe me, ladies. This time I bring you my oldest and closest friend, George Burns.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Brother Friars, ladies and gentlemen, Toastmaster and guest of honor. Well, another Friars dinner. On the dais, practically the same faces. Got Jolson, Jessel, Cantor, Benny, Danny Kaye, Pat O'Brien, and Bob Hope. You'll notice I've given Pat O'Brien and Bob Hope bottom billing. Gentiles. But asking me to talk about Jessel tonight is kind of silly. I've been telling Jessel stories for 30 years. Of course, never in front of a mixed audience. But a guy that's lived as long as Jessel, I'm sure that there must be a few clean things that I can think about. Let's see. Yeah, this is kind of cute. This is years ago. He was playing in Cleveland, and he was doing the Jazz Singer, starring in the play. That was before Jolson made it for the Warner Brothers. And incidentally, there's a great story that goes with that Jazz Singer deal. You see, Jessel starred in the play, and he felt that this was his property. So when Warner Brothers signed Jolson, it burned him up. And he took an oath that he would break Jolson and the Warner Brothers if it cost him his last cent. And he'll do it, too. The fact of the matter is, it's only a matter of days when Jolson and Warner Brothers will be broke because Jessel is down to his last $18. But anyway, let's get back to what happened in Cleveland. Jessel was starring in the play in The Jazz Singer, and I was playing one of the outlying houses. And at the time, there was a girl in town giving lectures on psychology. And Jessel invited me to supper after the show, and I went over there, Statler Hotel, went up to Jessel's room, and this girl was there. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, Jessel... No, I'm wrong. I can't tell this in front of a mixed audience. But later on, I'll be glad to tell it to you ladies alone. But I'm sure that there must be some clean thing that I can think about that I can tell to everybody. Oh, yes. Jessel was playing in San Francisco, and Eddie Cantor got a wire that he was very, very sick, that Jessel was sick, and Cantor flew up there with a doctor. In the meantime, there was a Chinese girl on the bill. That came into Jessel's dressing room to find out how Georgie was feeling. And at that same moment, the doctor and Cantor walked in. I can't tell that one either. Wait a minute, I got one. Jessel was booked on the Orpheum circuit. And he is booked, he's playing Winnipeg. And on the bill was an act called Crovney and Brown. Acrobatic dancers. And this Crovney was the most beautiful girl you've ever seen. A great contortionist. And in Winnipeg, it gets very cold. So Jessel from there he played Vancouver. In Vancouver, he was on the bill with a big act called Lasky's Redheads. And there was a tall girl called Elsie Yuba. And after rehearsal, then he went to Seattle. In Seattle, there was a little restaurant right alongside of the theater. And there was a blonde waitress. In Portland. Well, anyway, this is silly. There must be something I can say about Jessel. Let's go back to his childhood. When Jessel was 5 years old, I didn't go back far enough. Let's look into the future. I'm sure that when Jessel is 90 years old, he won't... No. It didn't stop Jolson, and it won't stop Jessel.
I know the one about the Chinese girl. It's a pipper. You know, all the speakers here seem to be so happy tonight that they don't have to follow Jessel. That's the thing. That's what makes them. That's why everybody's so good tonight. You know, see, when Jessel speaks, he's so topical. I mean, everything he says is so apropos of the evening that when you have to follow Jessel, you have that completely sunk feeling as though you left your script in Milton Berle's dressing room or something. You know, it's really... Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, isn't often seen on the roster of a Friars dais. I know he has something to say tonight. If this dinner were given to Dennis Day or to Barry Fitzgerald or even to Bing Crosby, I could understand it. What he knows about Jessel, I haven't the slightest idea. But we'll hear from him and find out. A very swell guy, Pat O'Brien.
Toastmaster, may as well give it the Burns routine. And Danny Kaye, distinguished guests, guest of honor, and Miss Blum. I can answer that in a hurry, Jack, about what I know about Jessel. Georgie, I think I'm perhaps the only one in the room, I know I'm the only one at the table, who was in a show that Georgie produced some 20-odd years ago called This Man's Town. He produced it. And if you think it's tough following Jessel, he should have got a gander at me following, trying to get my salary. I followed him. But it isn't easy at a day as such as this tonight, because after all, the table is loaded with comics. You heard Sam Goldwyn. But you take a half a gander up and down this table, Sam, the best years of our lives are not at this table. There is not enough hair at this table to make another bow for his fiddle, Benny's fiddle, believe me. Well, I go back many years with Georgie. I didn't discuss it with Jack, because I didn't know the Chinese girl. But I go back many years with Georgie, believe me. 1925, right, Georgie? That was the year of the show, This Man's Town. Georgie is the only one I know that can wear clothes like an Englishman and drink like an Irishman. There are times when he's worn a monocle. It finally got to look like a stained glass window in Lindy's, and he took it out. But the other night, at a dinner given for Sid Field, there were a lot of great tributes paid. And among the many tributes, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, you could take them all and qualify them exactly as Danny Kaye said from the rostrum in London. He didn't tell you tonight, Danny didn't, but their majesties could tell you what he said about Field. What Field said about Danny and what the King and Queen said about Danny, we'll throw it into one bundle tonight and say it about the guest of honor. In my generation, and some of you out there watching the progressiveness of great Toastmasters, the ones that I remember most vividly and graphically are Cap O'Hay, Jimmy Walker, Willie Collier, And my incense tonight is burned at the shrine, and my ever lose track of the incense, those of you tonight will help me get some more. When I mention those Toastmasters to you tonight, they've gone. And it's a great privilege for me tonight to pay tribute to the survival of the fittest. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Ladies and gentlemen, to head a large unit of the motion picture business is a great responsibility. The gentleman I'm going to introduce next accepted this responsibility and has discharged it with great credit to himself and the entire industry. He has distinguished himself by the fact that while he has the respect of everybody in the entertainment world, he has also managed to keep their affection. Mr. Louis B. Mayer.
Thank you, Jack. His Excellency, the Lieutenant Governor, His Honor the Mayor of Los Angeles, guest of honor, ladies and gentlemen. This is indeed a very fine, outstanding, and inspiring evening. I assure you that I have personally enjoyed these wonderful artists, the greatest in the world, I believe the greatest during my 41 years in the show business. Yes, Georgie, 40 years is a long time in the show business. I beat you by 1 year. I started in 1907 in Haverhill, Massachusetts. Few people can look back, as you can, George, upon so proud a record, and few can look forward, as you may, to a future so rich with promise of greater accomplishments to come. I would say that if 20th century were to let you loose, any studio would be glad to have you. I have often heard that being funny is a very serious business, and I'm sure it must be so. Personally, I never had much talent for telling jokes, and if I had to do it for a living, I'm afraid I would starve, George. But making people laugh, George, is a precious privilege. And I cannot help but think how much better this world would be if we had more George Jessels and fewer Joe Stalins. For wherever you find laughter, you find freedom. And thank God we laugh in America. I have known you, George, these many years. You're a fine man, a credit indeed to our profession, worthy of all the honor that may be paid you. My friends, may I stop for a moment talking about Georgie and say to you, this wonderful, inspiring gathering, I'm very proud that you turned out tonight for George, not because 40 years, which is a long time to be a success in the show business, but because of what he and these other great artists on this dais that you've heard tonight, what they give of themselves, not only during the war with our sons and brothers the flower of youth, giving their lives for our country to keep the morale and spirits up, for what they do and give of themselves for charity and every worthy cause. And to see you come out tonight and turn the tables around and do honor to one of them, I'm glad to be among you to pay tribute to you. I know of no more inspiring symbol of the opportunities to be enjoyed under our democratic American way of life than in your career presents. Lifting yourself up from the sidewalks of New York, George, you made your way into the highest realms of your profession. And regardless of your success, George, you never forgot where you came from. You have walked with kings, but you never lost the common touch. And your devotion to your fine mother, and I'm sure she's looking down and proud of you, will always remain deep in the hearts of all those who love you. Yes, you're a very funny fellow, George. You keep them rolling in the aisles. But I know the very serious chap behind that comedian's mask. How studiously concerned you are with so many problems of humanity. How deeply you read the philosophies and religions of all mankind, the better that you might understand and appreciate the blessings we owe to God. Surely I know a few people who gave so abundantly of themselves at any time, at any place, to so many worthy causes. You have become a living symbol of the showman's proudest tradition. I'm happy indeed for the privilege of sharing this moment with you, George. May God give us your fine talents for many, many more years to come. Thanks.
I also worked for Mr. Mayor before I worked for Mr. Zanuck. I made 2 pictures at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, one called Broadway Melody, which was very good, and then, thank you very much, and then I made another picture called It's in the Air. Immediately after that picture, Mr. Mayor traded me to Mr. Zanuck for a bridle for Busher in this thing. You know, I can't wait till I see what Jack Warner's going to get for me, you know? As a rule, ladies and gentlemen, the next speaker is introduced as either America's or the world's greatest comedian. I'm not going to do that tonight. I don't think that's fair to Attlee's son-in-law.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, brother Friars, I thought they were saving me for the Georgie Price dinner. Jack, thank you very much. Jack and I meet about every Sunday at one of these things and exchange tums. We have played so many dinners. We played so many dinners that with this tax cut, we'll be able to eat at home now, you know. We're at all the dinners, Benny and myself, Jessel. People are afraid to call Dave Chasen anymore. We come with the catering now. We should organize. We can get car fare, too, you know. But I, like all these other fellas, I'm very thrilled to be here, ladies and gentlemen. You know, they've given everybody, practically everybody in the Friars a dinner, and they've finally gotten down to our guest of honor. I understand that in a couple of weeks they're giving a testimonial snack to the men's room attendant. have to give Georgie a dinner. This is the only way any of us has a chance to speak. George grabs at any opportunity to speak. In fact, I heard he was Toastmaster at his own bris. Pat, you and I are the only ones that don't understand that. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Barney Dean slipped that under my door this morning. But I want to tell you that I think it's wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, they give this 20th century producer and 19th century vaudevillian a dinner. I saw his latest picture, Nightmare Alley. I liked it. Out at 20th century, anybody's a producer with a croquet mallet. But that's not true of Georgie. Georgie is a key man out there. He's a key man. Anytime Darryl goes to the washroom, Jessel hands him the key. But he's a wonderful guy. He really is. And from the start of Georgie's career, you knew that he was destined for greatness. It was obvious that nothing could stop him, not even his talent. Just take a look at him. 40 years in show business, he hasn't got a gray hair in his head. Well, he didn't have this afternoon. He's so versatile, even his hair changes moods. He's a wonderful fella, he really is, and he's the 40 years, he's the youngest of the Cantor, Jolson, Jessel trio. He's been in the business 40 years, and he's the youngest. Before him, it was Cantor, Jolson, and Shakespeare. But he really goes back a long way. He really does. He can remember way back when they were trying to get MacArthur to go over. And I know that Winchell started with Winchell in the Gus Edwards school days, as Eddie told you. Then Winchell learned to read and write, and Georgie became a producer. And I know that Winchell would be here tonight, but he couldn't make it. He was going to fly, but he couldn't make it. He's too busy getting a fitting on his uniform. But I could really stand up here and say a lot of things about Georgie, just from hearsay. George Burns told you nothing about him. But he's had quite a career, this man who is sometimes referred to as the Anthony Eden of Pico Boulevard. The kosher Errol Flynn. The one thing we all admit is that he's a great sentimentalist. We know him as the male Bell Baker, ladies and gentlemen. He really is a great sentimentalist, and he cried like a baby the other day when Truman made that speech about the draft. Georgie thought they were taking girls from 18 to 25. And it's a funny thing, I know him pretty well, and I know that he doesn't give a second thought to women. His first thought covers everything. And I'm happy to report tonight that he doesn't chase women as much as he used to. He had his desk sawed in half so he could take a shortcut. He's a wonderful guy. He's a very loyal fellow. He's crazy about his boss, Zanuck. The other night at the Academy Award, when Darryl bent over to kiss the Oscar, Jessel bent over and kissed Zanuck. It was a pretty sight. I can't tell you what he does to keep his job, but it's banned in Boston. Man of great talent, of course. We can't forget that Georgie sings, too. A lot of people try, but it's not true that he's the original voice of the turtle. I've only known Georgie, I think, personally, for about 15 years. And I feel rather unfortunate not knowing him long before that, because since I've known him, I've received many a lift just from his wonderful wit and personality. This guy is loaded with ability, loaded with that talent to make people laugh. He's a great man mentally and spiritually. Physically, nature knocked with 10 points. But he's got a very, very big heart for that body. And whenever he's working on a cause that he really believes in, he talks like a much taller man. He really does. He's a great guy. He's going to have many, many more tributes like this in the future because he's got the energy, the ability, and the personality to go on. And I hope so. And I hope I'm invited. Thank you.
Everybody is doing too well tonight to suit me. I want to take back one thing that I said about Hope, about his being unselfish. The reason I'm taking that back is because about 2 years ago I had to do a broadcast with Bob. We were on a program together. We did a spot together, a 15-minute spot for a benefit, and Hope's writers wrote this particular spot, with the result that Hope had all the jokes and I had all the straight lines. Matter of fact, I had so many straight lines that when I finally got to a joke, I read it like a question. Governor Warren attended the affair. Incidentally, I should read this wire, I believe, from Governor Warren. It says, please convey my congratulations to Georgie on the occasion of his centennial celebration. Until this week, I had expected to be present, believing that if you and he would last that long, I was a certainty to make it. However, my doctor says no, and he wins this time. Best wishes to a great fellow and his friends, Earl Warren. I started to say that Governor Warren attended the Luella Parsons dinner, and tonight we have as our special guest Lieutenant Governor Goodwin Knight. They alternate, it seems, at these different affairs. At my dinner, they sent the fire chief of Sacramento. However, it gives me great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce the Lieutenant Governor of the state of California, Goodwin Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. George Jessel, distinguished guests at this table, members of the Friars Club, and ladies and gentlemen. Someone said when I came in this evening, gee, I feel sorry for that guy, Goody Knight. He's up against a terrific problem with $5 million worth of speaking talent at that table, and that's exactly how I feel. Do I have an interest in your faith and prayers, please? But believe me, ladies and gentlemen, the world does progress. We do move forward. We are better. We are finer. We are more humane than in years past. And coming down from Sacramento, I thought about it. Because, up in the state capitol, we have all the pictures of the governors and the lieutenant governors, which are painted beautifully after they're defeated. And then they're placed on the wall where people may forget them as quickly as possible. And across the street from this hotel, we find figures of Beethoven and the heroes of the Spanish-American War and of the Civil War carved in marble and granite. And only the pigeons seem to pay any attention to them. And I say we've progressed, and we have, because you see, these fine men who are at this table this evening believe in giving the garlands while they still may be smelt and the flowers when they still may be seen. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it? All these men, as Mr. Mayor said, the greatest entertainers in their field in the whole world, joining as chums and friends here tonight in real goodwill and good fellowship. And so on behalf of the great state of California, it's a privilege and an honor to extend to them the congratulations of all of the 10 million people in our great state. And Al Jolson and Eddie Cantor and our guest of honor, and Bob Hope from Cleveland, all of these great comedians, all of these great men who give so much of themselves, have come to us here in California from the East, from another part of the United States. And when I thought about that coming down from Sacramento, I thought I should tell them just one thing about that. They've come here in our beloved California, and they're now Californians themselves. You know, it was the great Al Jolson who made our great song, California, Here I Come, worldwide known. And so I tell this little anecdote, brief indeed. I must be brief because you remember David Starr Jordan, the great president of Stanford University, said, "Wisdom is knowing what to do next, and virtue is doing it." And so the wisdom is to be brief, and I shall do so and simply tell you that all of these great artists coming to our great state remind me of an experience I had some years ago when I was a delegate to a fraternal convention in New York City. It wasn't a great convention, but after the 3 days, we had a dinner like we're having here tonight. The chairman said to me, "We'll have speakers from each state. And there's 28 states represented, and you'll speak last because you come from the furthest distance. And please," he said, "do me the honor and the favor of not bragging about California. For 2 reasons. In the first place, most of the things you people say about California are not true. And in the second place, you'll offend the delegate from Florida." So I promised. And the speaking began, he said, the chairman said, "And I shall ask all of the speakers here this evening to confine themselves strictly to fraternal affairs and not talk about their home cities." And the first speaker from New York said, I will digress just a moment to tell you that I am your host in New York City, the greatest city in the world, the greatest radio, the greatest streetcars, the greatest stock exchange, the greatest money. Money, you remember what they said about that. The wrong people have it. Anyway, he said, "The thing is that remember, if you please, that New York City is the greatest." And for 15 minutes he talked about New York City. The next man got up and said, "I wanted to talk about the fraternity, but let me tell you, I am from Massachusetts. Concord, Lexington, the Boston Tea Party, Harvard University, the Cabots, the Lowell." He talked for 10 minutes until he was flagged down, and the next gentleman was from Philadelphia, and he said, "I come from the cradle of American liberty. Let me remind you, if I may, that the Constitution was drafted in our city and the Declaration of Independence was signed in our city. The Liberty Bell is our personal custodial property. And in our great mountains in the West, we have enough oil and coal to last the United States for 200 years. And he went on, and the next gentleman got up and he said, "Just a minute. I'm from Virginia, sir. I would remind you that we gave this nation Washington, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe." He talked about everything in the Deep South except Lucky Strike cigarettes. And then the man from Ohio talked about Ohio. The man from Indiana bragged about Indiana. The man from Iowa looked down at me, way down at the end of the table, number 28, and he pointed a long accusing finger and he said to me, "Notwithstanding the fact that you have taken half of our best people and put them in some place called Long Beach, Iowa still is the greatest state in the..." The man talked about Illinois. Georgie, I'm not going through the 48 states. The man from Illinois talked about the great state of Illinois, talked about the magnificent city of Chicago, talked about the stockyards. He didn't say which way the wind was blowing, and on and on. And finally, about midnight, the president said, "We'll hear from the delegate from California. Please," he said, "the hour is growing late." That was a hint. "Mr. President," I said, "I shall be brief. My name is Goodwin Knight. I come from that great state on the Pacific Slope, California. I wish all of you could live there. I wish all of you could be there. But since you can't, let me just say this to you, that if Christopher Columbus had sailed his 3 little ships across the broad blue Pacific and landed on our golden shores, most of you would not have been discovered yet. God bless you, Georgie, and thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Lieutenant Governor. We were very happy to have you with us tonight. You know, if George Jessel were introducing the next speaker, incidentally, I heard a wonderful line the other day about the difference between Jessel, Cantor, and Jolson. I don't know whether you heard it or not. So that Jolson has $5 million. Cantor would like to have $5 million, and Jessel doesn't want Cantor to have it. That's the thing. What a difference between 3 people. That I never heard before. Such a thing I never heard in my life before. You didn't say that.
God damn
You know, as I started to say, ladies and gentlemen, if George Jessel were introducing our next speaker, he would probably start out something like this. Like, despite the urgency of laissez-faire, this man promised he would come, and he's here. But promises are like the robes of Penelope. Woven in the morning, unraveled at night. Now, Jessel himself wouldn't know what that meant. But neither would we, so we would immediately give him credit for being a brilliant scholar. Jessel reminds me of a show I saw 2 years ago in New York, Skin of Our Teeth. Nobody understood it, so they gave it the Pulitzer Prize. You know, it's the same thing with him. I shall introduce our next speaker in a very simple manner, ladies and gentlemen, a most beloved and respected man, the chief executive of the finest city in the United States, Mayor Fletcher Bowron.
Mr. Toastmaster, honored guests, guests of honor, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to join with all of you gathered here tonight, representing the legion of his friends in honoring Georgie Jessel. Everybody likes Georgie. They can't do otherwise. He's genial, courteous, always thoughtful of others. As much as any person I know, he always thinks of nice things to do or say, rather than trying to hurt those with whom he comes in contact, regardless of how trying they may be. I leave it to others to refer to his place on the stage, the screen, and radio as actor, comedian, producer. I will confine myself to expressing appreciation of him as a citizen of this community. Of course, I do not mean to limit, to circumscribe by referring to the local picture, but one can't be a really good citizen of his country or the world unless he practices citizenship where he lives. His neighbors know what kind of a fellow citizen he is. Georgie has always responded to every request in his hometown. Although his audience may at times be small, the publicity value very limited. He has not only responded to my request, but he has even asked me to make a speech for him, the occasion being the unveiling of the monument of Chaim Solomon. He has participated in many comparatively unimportant events that others would have passed up with explanations, excuses, apologies. But he has always added to his long list of friends, and thereby his effectiveness has not been lessened, but rather the demands increased for the larger, more important events. He has contributed much to his community, the community in which he has made his place of residence, which, after all, is a pretty good place to live, to be surrounded by good friends. On behalf of the city of Los Angeles and the people of this great metropolitan area, the third largest and assuredly the best in America, I bring greetings to you, George Jessel. Thanks for all you've done and for being a good citizen. Your fellow citizen, your neighbors, think you're a great guy.
Mayor Bowron, it isn't often that I ask a favor of a city official, but right in front of NBC there on the curb, there's a long stretch of curb painted red there that I wish you could have removed so it would accommodate more cars there. 3 times this year I've had to go into a parking lot there. It would help just a little bit in there, Our next guest is always introduced as the world's greatest entertainer, and of course he is. And his return to show business after his many years of retirement has been nothing short of sensational. And he's very, very much like Georgie Jessel. Well, he's a ladies' man. Anyway, they grow up and become ladies. That's one thing about him. So I was very happy to introduce, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Al Jolson.
Tonight, you are looking at the goose who's going to lay the golden egg. Why I am brought at this ungodly hour to tell jokes or to make any speech, I don't know. I haven't any speech. I haven't any writers to write me jokes. But I'm proud of one thing, that I'm standing up here and I'm able to say things about Jessel. Outside of Cantor, who I'm glad left me out with the idea of Georgie saying something about my death, and I know he's still mad at me about the jazz singer. And Jessel, well, always imitated me. Stole my jokes. Stole my women. Or tried to. I remember quite a few years ago, Georgie, when I was in this town, I was going with a certain girl, what her name is, I won't mention. She wasn't a chink. In your Easter bonnet, with all the frills upon it, you'll be the sweetest lady in that Easter parade. I'll be all in clover, and when they look you over, I'll be the proudest fellow in that Easter parade on the avenue. I'm talking about Fifth Avenue. The photographers will snap us
and you'll find that you're in the roto gravure. Could write a sonnet about your Easter bonnet and of the girl I'm taking to that Easter parade on the avenue. I'm talking about Fifth Avenue. The photographers will snap us, and you'll find that you're in the roto gravure. I could write a sonnet about your Easter bonnet and all of the girl I'm a-taking to that Easter This one part. Look, I hope, Georgie, that I'll be able to, and you'll ask me to, sing at your dinner for the next, 30 years. Not only for yourself, but God, I want to live 30 years more, Georgie. This is a little song you never heard. Play, the baby song. Yeah. I want you to listen to a new song. I wrote it about a little kid I adopted a few weeks ago. Nearest thing to heaven is that rippling, sunny smile. The nearest thing to heaven is to hold him for a while and feel those tiny little hands pulling at my tie. How he laughs when he rumples my hair and pokes his little finger in my eye. Nearest thing to heaven are those rosy apple cheeks. I've learned to understand him every time he speaks. And just like his mommy, is everything divine. Nearest thing to heaven is that little guy of mine. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, Mr. Benny has a few words that he'd like to say about something very, very important. Please, it's awfully wonderful of you, know that, to let an old guy like me come up here and even sing 3 songs. And I want to tell you, next time I'll prepare with some jokes, Bob. Jack, will you get in there? God bless you. Get in there. Go.
You know, only in our business
do you remain so young? The fact. The fella Jolson, nearly 60. Cantor, 55. Burns, 51. Jessel, 50. Put them all together, you got a foursome at Hillcrest. I mean, that's one thing. I'll be 40 my next birthday myself. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know of anyone more worthy of this tribute tonight than our guest of honor. We've waited a long time to do this, but probably it's because we would rather hear him talk all evening. He's celebrating his 40th year in show business. It's with great pride now that I bring you our guest of honor, a man that has brought so much joy and happiness into all of our lives, George Jessel.
Mr. Toastmaster, Mr. Mayor, and if God forbid anything should happen, Governor, and I must modestly say that Lieutenant Governor Knight's geographical essay is the finest tribute ever paid to me that I've ever had. This has been a most trying evening for me. Listening to many gentlemen highly successful in their own vocations attempting to be after-dinner speakers. And considering this great fund of inexperience, they've done remarkably well, and I compliment them, as I would compliment a 60-year-old baseball umpire who has crocheted his first tablecloth. Most men who are recipients of a testimonial dinner such as this are immediately overcome with emotion when called to their feet, and generally begin a hesitant address by saying, "Oh, my friends, I have no words at this time. I have more words than in Gone with the Wind." And as to the praises and the many shafts that have been wafted at me by most of the speakers, it would be nice if I were overcome by the close proximity of these celebrated people. Unfortunately, I'm not. I don't think that posterity will be as generous as you have been with your laughter and applause to most of the speakers. Look to your mind's eye and see what might be written of most of them in the future. A short word portrait of their career. Mr. Cantor, favorite radio star of the Crystal Set days. Mr. George Burns, whose lifeline of existence is dependent upon what Gracie will say when he says, "And what then happened to your brother?" Mr. Danny Kaye, current favorite of a shattered and bankrupt Great Britain.
Mr. Bob Hope, the most popular comedian of an era when America was in its most bewildered state. Mr. Pat O'Brien of Vine Street, Parnell. Mr. Jolson, with a great success, shielded from the public eye by a handsome boy in his 20s and 1,000 fat Victor records. And the Toastmaster. Every schmuck is a Toastmaster. Particularly gratified or complimented by so many insinuations that it's about time that honor was paid to me. This is not the first dinner in my honor by any chance. I was given a dinner by the parent club, the Friars, in 1928 at the Old Monastery in New York, and the speakers were Messrs. Cohan, Collier, Marcus Lowe, Walter Kelly, Sam Harris, Simon Sylvan, and many others who have since gone down the road to their fathers. And these gentlemen, in singing my praises, did not incorporate any monologues that they had formerly auditioned for Alexander Pantages. But they spoke of the many things that I had done for humanity in general and of the great contribution I had made to mankind. And even though modesty forbids it, it is not fair to a young lady with whom I have a date later in the evening not to hear some fine things about me. As a child, I made up many sayings which are known the world over. A friend in need is a friend indeed, is one of mine. Another, money you make like that will never do you any good. Rockefeller can only wear one suit at a time, was one of my phrases. And I should have been happy if the preceding speakers had mentioned the help that I had been to men throughout the years. I wish I could say this in the second or third person. I recall walking along the waterfront in Albany many years ago and seeing a young man having trouble starting his boat. I helped him. He never forgot it. That man was Robert Fulton, ladies and gentlemen. The world doesn't know this, nor did you hear it from the mouths of these speakers, of how I was called upon to Washington by a great man in the time when our country was in great hazard. When he said to me, "Georgie, I don't know what to do about this general I have. He drinks, he smokes, and with his beard, people think he looks Jewish. I'm being terribly criticized." And I said, "Abe, keep Grant. Let McClellan go." Only lately I've been called upon to serve my country. A publisher who lives in San Simeon sent for me some months ago and said to me, "Georgie, I have a man who I feel is right for the presidency, and I want you to help him in public utterance." So while most of you think I was appearing in a carnival, a saloon in New York, I was at Lowe's Tokyo, ladies and gentlemen. Lowe's Tokyo. And I helped this man. I said to him, "Doug, your speeches are too flowery. You sound as if you have a Godhead complex. The public don't want that. Remember, you're just a man, Doug. You're not Zanuck." Not only have I helped my fellow man, but I've helped dumb animals as well. Some years ago, I met a horse. Now, fool around with that. A Chinese girl and a horse. Do something with that. I met this horse as a 2-year-old, and nobody wanted to bet on him. A thin, skinny horse. Rosenberg was his name. I made him change his name to Rosemont, and he beat stagehand to win the Santa Anita Handicap. But all this is yesterday's roses. All this is clabrage in a tunnel. More than anyone else, I think in America do I know how much bunkum there is in testimonial dinners. I have had, through my years in public life, to tell more lies about guests of honor than any one of my contemporaries. I have screamed their virtues from the speaker's table, hiding their vices in my own conscience. But I have found this to be true, and this is in defense of the Friars giving this dinner for me. I never knew anyone who was the recipient of a testimonial dinner who didn't have something that was pretty good, some slight decent quality. No one ever gave a dinner for Lefty or Sitting Bull. And so, after 40 years in show business, I'm inclined to look at things philosophically. I don't know whether or not life begins at 40 or not. If it does, it begins from here up. But the manuscript of life is a tragic farce. There's very little mystery in it. And we know very soon the finish, and we reach for our hats and our hearts. At this moment, the scene is light and gay, and for me particularly is the manuscript sweetly scented. As the curtain rises, I find myself at this moment basking on the right side of the stage. I am not a rich man, but whatever I have is profit. All this is profit. I began with nothing. Not only that, after I was a few days old, they took Get Something away from me. But at this milestone in a minstrel's career, I find myself blessed with good health and a little daughter who gives every sign of being comfort to me in the twilight years. And I'm further blessed having so many acquaintances of friends, not only here but throughout all America, but particularly these who have come tonight to break bread in this intimate scene with me. And as for myself and the manuscript, I find the part that I play is a good part. For I play a man with many faults who makes many mistakes and many, many speeches. I have but 3 cardinal virtues. I was a good son. I am a good friar. And I have good judgment in the budgeting of words, or shall we say the art of oratory. And with that in mind, I am keenly sensed as to anticlimax. And I cornescently pause, because it is natural that a man pause at this stage of his life and think of those of close kinship that we want with us only at moment of compliment. And as I say that, by force of being middle-aged and sentimental, my eyes fill up. And this is a cue. And I take it. And like so, I salute these distinguished gentlemen who have said words in praise. And like so, I throw a kiss to you assembled. And like so, I sit down.
want to thank you for the very nice thing you said about me. I came here with an allergy yet. Good night. After what you said about me, it's going to be very difficult to do what I have to do at this moment, but I'm going to try. Georgie, stand up here just 1 minute. The Friars have asked me rather, to give you this little gift. I don't quite know what it is, but it's a token of their great admiration and respect and love for you and for what you have done, not only for the club, but for everybody, everywhere. And here this is. You please accept this from the Friars Club.
This is an insignia of the Friars Club, evidently gold. And I shall treasure it and keep it with me and in my heart always, long after the Friars of today go back to Farmer Page and the Goldie brothers.
And now I'm going to ask Bob Hope to step up here for just a second. You know, Bob, not long ago, we of the Friars gave you a dinner. We also had a little token for you, or we wanted to have, but at that time the Friars couldn't afford it. So we have this same token for you, and for the very same reasons that we have given them to George Jessel.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Same as Jessel.
I got nothing at my dinner, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, mine was a stag. It was a different affair. But now, from now on, we will have dancing. This concludes this part of the entertainment. Thank you very, very much.